Good morning to you, my friends, wherever you may be in the world today. Alan Clements here with my podcast, As I See It, a live stream on YouTube, Facebook, SoundCloud, Lisbon, Apple, Google. Thank you for tuning in. I woke up today touched, inspired to shift from the delight of this protest series that I've been giving called Rise Up. And I thought that I would do another installment today, but changed my mind, had a change of heart. And instead, I'm going to embark upon a spontaneous series, 11-part series. It's something about 11. I was born on 11th of February. Something about the word 11. 11-part series on a Maverick's masterclass on the art of creativity, the creative process, a very important term for me, Dhamma, artistry, the embodiment of one's own personal style and aesthetic in the way that we think and feel and talk and listen and relate and touch and love and kiss and eat and cry and all the things that we do as human beings. With introduction on the, I want to call it the fine, cosmic, existential, surreal art of going crazy. Those of you who do define your lives by art and creativity, it is a very fine art to learn to inhabit crazy. Crazy and wild are slightly different. Mad, crazy, and wild. Improvisational, wildness, craziness, and madness. There's something so beautiful about being a mad woman, although I'm a man. Being a mad man, what does that really mean, right? Okay, we're going to dive into that over the next 11 days. Thank you for tuning in. I can't live without you. I wish I knew you. I think, maybe. You probably like me for about 5 minutes. It's probably better to see me through distance and digital mediums. This is a very important set of talks for me because those of you who know me, those of you who don't, I abandoned student way back. I'm so disobedient, but I'm a very good learner, although slow and disciplined. But I got involved in teaching, call it sharing, teaching, retreats and meditation. It was really kind of a way to survive in the convulsion of a country and a culture and a global culture of commercialism and capitalism that I decidedly rejected on every level of my being. As a teenager, as a college student, as an entrepreneur and an artist in Los Angeles, I did not belong. And I know you can relate. You don't belong. You feel that you do not want to fucking integrate into this shrapnel of greed and fear and pornography and craziness. And you just do everything imaginable, right? Through sex and love and money and denial and fear and deception. And you try your hand at meditation, do a little bit of yoga here and there. And you can barely survive, even with bucks and loot and love and sex. It's just a big fucking contortion into being, at best, if you're not really lucky to break out of the mold of puppetry and mimicry, you belong as a kind of affluent middle class, lower class, upper middle class, uber wealthy class puppet of the lie. The culture is just a big lie in the way that I feel it. And I don't want to protest it anymore. I just want to go dive down deep into the artistry of what's true for you. Okay. And to validate that deeper, more intrinsic, intuitive, intellectualized, emerging epiphany of soul voice. What's your soul voice? Not a heart print, your soul voice, the vocabulary of your interiority at the purest, deepest, most vulnerable, energized level, getting down deep into the rock and roll of you, right? That's art. And I want to dive in over these next 11 days to some of the key points that I have found both valuable and, I would almost say, undeniably necessary to achieve some modicum of success in the self-reflection of you as an artist, you as an expression of creativity and originality and the improvisational, inarticulate, as Van Morrison said, the inarticulate voice of the heart, but it can be made radically articulate. So if you're interested in art, you're interested in finding your voice, your untapped creativity, or that you're somewhere along the line as a writer, a singer, a lover, a sex worker, a soldier, a politician, a president, a pope, and you want to access some of that more fundamental, adrenaline of your goddess, your godness, your wild, mad woman, mad man, empowered sensibility of integrity, of who you really are, I know that's cliched, but who you really are beyond the plagiarist, beyond the conformist, beyond the poser, beyond the views and the likes and swipes and blah, 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 digital whore. I just want to live according to my large Instagram following. I'm a meme artist that just copies everything that I've ever thought and dreamt and just, repeat, repeat, repeat. But how to get down deep into that radical post-surrealist, if you will, that deeper than Dali-esque, if you will. I point to that metaphorically as what's uniquely you. That's, for me, in every one of us, to state the obvious, every one of us, despite the need to conform and obey and do the alphabet according to how the alphabet should be written and spoken, everything, like a snowflake, is utterly unique. And that's the wild, crazy paradox of life. And four walls and city streets and blocks and churches and isms and orthodoxies and all the ways in which we march left, right, center, and backwards and dissolve into the lockstep of yet another blip on the stage of infinity, and we become a sand granule on the beach of nowhere. But do we contribute? What does contribution mean to you? And it's really a fine edge between, hear me, narcissism, artistry, and liberation, because it's so self-indulgent, the self-evolving life of the artist. At least it is for me. I mean, you've got to really no boundary, no timing, no cadence, no noise, know what works, what doesn't. You got to risk, if there's a word beyond addiction, I mean like OCD in major caps, you've got to really run the risk of being in the sewer, the dungeon, the basement, the attic, the galaxy of everything. It means to feel, the art of feeling, more intrinsic voices and feelings and emotions of who who you really are, because there's so many multiple identities, right? This is where, and I'm going to get into a little bit of the topics over these next 11 days, from how to begin, rituals, setting intentions, what does trust mean, the art of intuition, courage, flow, aesthetics, style, discipline, goals, completion, continuity, knowing your own vocabulary, vision, obstacles, mindfulness, humor, spontaneity, and right at the center of it all, can you give yourself joy? You want to make the creative process something other than the hard life of an artist. I have no idea about how you couple art with loot. May the patrons pour in. May the patrons pour in and support the girls and the boys to give us the dream of their creation. And yes, there are a lot of people who do the rap and the hip hop in all different ways that have skill in the industry of art. I don't know much about the business of art, but I want to focus on the execution of creativity. Nothing to do about you. I have nothing to do with teaching, but to share with you my inside story on how I go about learning the use of language, live streaming, podcasting, theater, comedy, improvisational, post non-acting. I loved as a child and in high school and in college, art, oils and acrylics and brushes and paint. I've given my daughter, beautiful Bella, turning 15 soon, from pre-birth, the opportunity to just go wild with the brush, with the paint, with the oils, with the chalk, with everything on her terms. And that would be a number one point for me is, can you anoint yourself with the elegance of on your terms? And to know those terms, you're not paying rent to your soul. And yes, you want to manifest vision into completion. I want to talk about the process. It's one thing to be a writer, but it's one thing to write a book. That's a whole other process. And it's one thing to want to perform. It's a whole other thing to produce your own performance and to actually have people come out and applaud and maybe even at times stand up and go, wow, over the top. Finding your joy in your art. Not your success, but your joy. And that is a daily process, an hour-to-hour process. And I want to say, before I kind of close this opening introduction, I want to just riff. I just want to be spontaneous. I don't want to really plan these things out. If you find moments of uninterest or boredom, that's your issue. But I want to give you and share with you my own process because, this story that we're in called this fucking boring pandemic where people are dying and losing their jobs and being manipulated and coerced into, rolling up their sleeve and taking an experimental drug in order to don't get death from a fucking virus. It's like the evil of all this thing's going on right now. And it's like, enough. And so how to find art? When you get out of bed, how do you do your yoga, your meditation artfully? Finding joy in the way in which you think and cook and touch and bathe and shave and rest and meditate and love and listen and talk and allow that place in us to dislike things. Art requires a radical trust and a faith and a confidence in a wide range of emotions and increasing that bandwidth to no longer being so Mr. and Mrs. spiritually friendly. Authenticity is really jagged. And you want to close your doors. Sometimes you want to lock your doors. You want to open your windows at times. Sometimes you want to close the blinds. But you want to turn on the music of uniqueness, originality. There's nothing more anathema to art than conformity. And that realm of posers and plagiarisms and repetitive Dhamma talks that I've been giving for 30 to 40 years, telling the same old stories over and over again. You know, many people get involved in yoga and spirituality and psychotherapy in order to adapt, in order to get it right, to overcome greed, fear, and anger, and get the alignment to your downward facing dog just right. But alignment to your artistry is really an alignment to an asana that's never been done before. And a lot of art is so there if you only attune and listen, learn the art of attunement and listening to the fine vocabulary of your uniqueness. And that takes some time to overcome what? The false art of mimicry. It's like sexuality is the embodiment of intimacy. It is anathema to performance, to endurance, to habit, right? Art is sexual. It's romantic. It's aesthetic. It's beautiful. It's tragic. It's a storytelling form of cognitive, emotional, bringing forthness from soul to page, to performance, to anti-performance, to shared space. It's a way of living. So I will speak throughout this series of art found within form. For me personally, books, film, the spoken word, theater, poetry, riffing, and also the pragmatism of the process. I had a long conversation with a friend last night from Los Angeles, and she and I were really talking, and she was really asking me about my own process of where I'm at and what I'm doing with my creativity. And it was really quite interesting for me to be asked on a more intimate level, what is your process? And so I went to bed last night completely thinking I would continue this protest series, and I woke up this morning feeling, wow, you know, I don't really want to go down that road anymore. I want to anoint the edge of my own authenticity with the expression of art. And so thank you for tuning in. Let me close with a couple of more points, not too long, and I want to go down to the beach and walk and feel and see where I want to be and do and think. And I want to really try to do what I can to remove cliche from the space. How to get into your artistry. How to reinvent how you dress, speak, think. And to me, one of the most important qualities that I've found is in the refinement of energy. When I'm feeling dense or tired, you've got a rhythm through that. But good yoga, good meditation, good cognitive intention is how to understand the psychology of access to normally unheard voices, intuitions, instincts of one's own mind and body. Many of you know that I'm a longtime advocate, fan, not recreational, but of dosing. I was thinking this morning back in Bali, after leaving the monastery, I was in a relationship with a woman, and we lived in Ubud in the early 80s. And I remember going down to Canggu, or was it Uluwatu, and picking mushrooms all the time and doing small doses of them for months on end, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week. even when I was in high school and college. I really was fond of the small dose, hundreds of times. And I find myself doing the same thing over the last, once we've engaged in the pandemic, I have gone towards the psychedelic for support and radiance, and continue to. And I'm going to speak about the role of psychedelics and dosing in regard to creativity. But more to the point here is energy, frequency. My teachers in Burma used to talk about the power of language, for example, and vocabulary, words. It's become somewhat cliche today. It's even been taken off by a people. But words as vibration is something I've been speaking about for decades. But it came to me from Seda U Pandita, and it's intrinsic to Dhamma and to the Buddhist tradition. The few people really relate to the Buddha as a kind of existential Michelangelo. I do. And that the entire Dhamma practice is existential art, cognitive art. There's no two people that will do Dharma alike until you embody the ism over the artistry of liberation, the liberation from constraint, conformity. It's the embrace of uniqueness through high fidelity understanding of the attributes of consciousness. That's dimensionality within art, is understanding that the source of our artistry is access to states of mind. Meditation as the adventure into the development of familiarity with states of consciousness, consciousness as a field of intersecting frequencies, waves and particles and energies. Those of you who meditate, those of you who meditate and have done psychedelics, that we live in a field of vibration. And it's condensed in forms of bodies and stars and earths and cars. But we all know on a quantum level, on a not so quantum level, just do a little bit of a higher dose of psychedelic, and you realize that we're all, in this kind of simultaneity of a vibratory field of cognitive energy that congeals or releases constantly in these undulating waves of emotionality and psychology and existential energy, this quantumness. And so it begs the understanding the nature of words as something other than words, if you will. And in Buddhism, and you look carefully at the esoteric nature of the classical Buddhist teachings, which drew me to Burma and drew me to Mahasi Sayadaw, although he was, one of the great fathers of mindfulness. His power to me was his Dharma artistry. He himself, when you read his books and you listen to his Dharma talks that have been translated, he speaks poetically to cognitive art as liberating transportraits that convey beauty. His whole teaching was based on the Pali Buddhist word bhavana, which is the beautification of consciousness, which is the study of states of mind called sobhana cetasikas, beautiful states of mind. Many of you may know, but many don't, that Mahasi Sayadaw's name, his original monk's name, was Usobhana. Sobhana is beautiful states of mind. He was a Dharma artist. And again, from what I've learned from the teachings as a fledgling student, is the Buddha was this existential Michelangelo who was able, from the readings that I interpret into my own heart, able to identify and embrace and engage cognitive energy and to create releasing formations for self and other, if they had the ability to hear, the release of fear, the release of greed, the release of inhibition, the release of pride, the release of conformity, the release of the need for applause. And so uniqueness and what could I do in my life as a start? What densifies my day in my mind? What releases density? And what increases luminosity, fluency, spontaneity? And I would encourage you, if you're going to follow me along on this kind of Maverick's somewhat master class on the art of creativity and artistry, write down in your notebooks, create a notebook, and write when you feel, and scribble when you feel, but where are you confined? What's densifying your day, your mind? Is it food? Is it people? Is it conversations? Is it behaviors? What is it? And know those particular dimensions of density. Not to vilify them, not to scapegoat them, not to, oh my God, I'm going to bust them with a chisel. But to know them and to then know the next dimension of what do you imagine? Where do you feel your energy coming alive? For some people, it's sex. For others, it's fantasy. I'm not saying just sexual masturbatory fantasy. It's just purely the indulgence of watching a Netflix fantasy, and they become luminous, alive. They like to sit back with a little bit of pakalolo or a little bit of a dose of something, and they just want to be moved. Art is the self-movement into you being the expression of your sci-fi, in the way in which you speak, think, move, relate, rest, meditate, do whatever we do, and equally in form, whether it be a book or a film or a poem or whatever it is that you want to anoint and call it your art. So the study of energy is in a way the foundation for me of being a more creative individual. Of course, it requires unthinkable refinement and discipline and support systems and on and on. We're going to get into those. But start your list of how can you increase the luminosity, the energetic sensitivity of your being. Like right now, for example, I'm kind of tuning out and turning off after my second walk in the afternoon and just closing down the world and going deeply inward, often with some degree of psychedelic, with meditation, with a little bit of yoga, music, and my notebooks everywhere, my pens, my markers, my recorders, and many of you know that I'm involved in a film that I'm creating. It's actually a multiple part series, a film, and I would love to put music in it and spoken word. It's going to be both serious and poignant, tragic and comedic, and I'm well into that process. And so I'm giving myself, based on the good graces also of my support systems, the time to feel. And that's the last point I want to make today, is to enter the artistic arena requires a discipline to give yourself the gift to feel and to increase the luminosity of that field in order to feel. And I want to speak about some of the pragmatic components of that in the coming days up until October 29th will be the 11th part of this bold series of a Maverick's masterclass on the art of going crazy to find your sanity. I know when I first got turned on to LSD in 10th grade in high school, it must have been back in 1967, it was a revolution which revealed to me, more so than the substance, the cultural lockdown that I had been living in. And that strange sense of discomfort that you feel when you're not living in rhythm to something inner. And I've had these conversations with political prisoners who've been confined, some of them up to 22 years, where they don't lose their artistry. It's not just, having freedom in form. But for me, I felt imprisoned by both an unknowing and by a cultural setting that was so disparate from what I felt my spirit to be. And I found my spirit come alive through sports, through kissing and touching and intimacy with the woman, through dance and sound. I loved it. And then eventually through philosophy and poetry and surfing and the beach, and then of course the psychedelic. And then came radical, deep, post-rock music. Metaphorically, both literally and metaphorically, through people like the Cream and Hendrix and Iron Butterfly and so many others. And it revealed to me the wisdom of confinement. Aha, now I know of release. And then it took time to break lockstep to the habit of the classroom. I was so bored in the four walls of the school that I just put my head down on the desk. I don't know how teachers tolerated me. Until eventually, I wrote LSD on my sneakers, and I took a public speaking course that kind of serendipitously brought me into myself. And it was like, oh my God, Alan, it's your turn to do 3 minutes in front of the class. What in the fuck are you going to say? And I was like, oh my God, this isn't the war machine. This isn't Vietnam. This isn't the military. This isn't yet another football game. This isn't blah, blah, blah. This is like you on you. That's art, right? That's you on you. You found the edge of your delightful terror. Oh my fucking God, you're going to speak in front of a class and go crazy. You're going to bore them to death, and you're going to melt down in front of them, and you fucking know what to say. And so I remember looking down at my sneakers and seeing LSD on them that I had written, and I said, just fucking speak spontaneously about that drug. And everyone in the class, I remembered it clearly. What in the fuck? What is he talking about? What is he talking about? I didn't even know what I was talking about, except that it was real. Art and real and risk. Art, real, risk. Art, real, risk. Art, real, risk. Intuitive trust. Releasing into what you want to bring forth. Write a list of what you want to bring forth. And if we get up on Zoom with a chance to interrelate, which I'm hoping that we do soon, I just beg of someone out there to set it up for me. I can't do anything more. I will be happy to participate freely in your creative process to help support you in the emergence, whatever level you're in. But I'm just speaking about what turns you on? Not what makes you money. And it's so easy to process the complaint. Yes, 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 yes. But art, good art, heart art, soul, entelechy, intuitive expression, improvisational presence, the Dhamma of liberation from fear, is really about you using your voice, not belonging to the cult of being able to sit still for an hour and being mindful of nothing other than you being mindful of you, not going anywhere fast except to your fake need to be a teacher of this story. Mindfulness of my denial, in denial of me being mindful of something called me having an insight. And so art is naked presence. Naked, naked. You can't undress enough to get into the artistry of soul speak. The way you kiss, really, when you lose it on the lips of a natural love, and you just are in that shared space of fluids and tongues and bodies, and you are coming alive in that art. Writing a book, right? Spoken word, a poem, trusting in the intelligence of your natural style. It's anything but a self-help book. It's anything but teaching. It might have something in it that inspires others, but art is an indulgent. These are spectacular expressions of art. And they came from you. They came from human minds. And so I want to encourage you, if you have something in you that wants to explore your own untapped artistry, well, join me in this process, include others, invite them in, and let's go wild together and explore this maddening, crazy process of becoming sane in the beautiful field of your own heart and soul. And remember, if you need remembering, that art is about becoming beautiful. It may make you cry, it may be gallows humor, it may be radical prose that bleed and weep. But there's something in the way you think and move and dance. Whew. That is so beautiful. You're amazing. That's all it takes is, yep. I want to be in amazement at giving myself this gift. Despite it all, despite the mandates and the preoccupation with the narratives of both lies and more lies and big lies, wherever you find yourself, come join me in this process of the artistry of the human soul, yours and mine together, creating magic and miracles and wonderment and adventure and belonging to this mystical, very special trans cult of our own Buddhist sphere, our own bodhisattva spirit, our own originality, our own wild maverick. What will you do? What will you say? What will you create? Get your notebook, buy it, take out an old one, and start some wild, crazy pages with me, and let's join together on this journey. And let's go crazy together making some art over these next 11 days. And I'll share with you my own process. So thank you from my heart to be part of this spontaneous little momentary introduction. And God willing, see you tomorrow at 9:30 here from Maui on part 2 of this Maverick's masterclass of the creative process, the wild, crazy art of going crazy to find our creative sanity. So from my heart to yours, have a beautiful day. Thank you.